My name is Carolyn Hayes, and at 62 years old, I thought the most turbulent parts of my life were behind me. My husband, David, and I had built a good, quiet life here in Cedar Falls, Iowa. After he retired from the farm equipment factory and I left my part-time job at the library, our days settled into a comfortable rhythm. We had our morning coffee on the porch swing, tended to our garden full of stubborn but determined tomatoes, and took long drives on country roads just to see where they would go. We had raised our kids, seen them off to their own lives, and now was our time. For our 40th anniversary, David did something he had never done before. He completely surprised me. He came home one afternoon with a brand new cherry red sedan. It was beautiful, gleaming in the Iowa sun like a polished apple. He just grinned that crooked grin of his and said, "For all our new adventures, honey." It was more than a car. It was a promise of golden years filled with road trips to see the grandkids and spontaneous journeys just for the fun of it. David financed it through the Hawkeye Workers Credit Union, the same one he had been a member of for over 40 years through his job. My name was not on the loan paperwork, a detail that seemed completely unimportant at the time. Why would it be? I was not a member, just the wife of one. It was his account, his loan. We made a hefty down payment, and our first monthly payment went through without a hitch. The car was a dream, and for 2 wonderful months it was. Then, in the blink of an eye, my world shattered. David had a heart attack while working in his woodshop. It was sudden, massive, and there was nothing anyone could do. One minute he was there, smelling of sawdust and coffee, and the next he was gone. The silence he left behind was deafening. Just 2 days before he passed away, he had sat at the kitchen table and written the check for the second car payment. But in his haste, distracted by a story I was telling him about a squirrel in the garden, he made a mistake. A tiny, insignificant mistake. He wrote the check for $5 less than the actual payment amount. The day after I lost the love of my life, with the house full of sympathetic neighbors and the scent of casserole in the air, the phone rang. My son, Michael, answered it. It was the credit union. A clipped, professional voice on the other end informed him that the payment was short by $5. Michael, bless his heart, was trying to shield me from everything. He calmly explained that his father had just passed away the day before, that we were in the middle of making arrangements, but he would make sure my mother sent them the $5 right away. He hung up, shaking his head at their timing but assuming it was just a bureaucratic oversight. We thought that was the end of it. We were so wrong. The next day they called again. This time I answered. The man on the phone, a Mr. Henderson, did not offer condolences. He did not ask about the $5. He told me in a voice as cold as a winter morning that since the loan holder was deceased, the loan was now void. They demanded the car back. Immediately, I was stunned. I tried to explain that it was my car, a gift from my late husband. That I had no other transportation because we had traded in my old vehicle. I could hear the papers rustling on his desk as I spoke, as if my grief was just an inconvenient noise. He said it did not matter. My name was not on the loan. The car belonged to them. A wave of panic washed over me, a new, sharp fear on top of the mountain of sorrow I was already buried under. The days that followed were a special kind of hell. While I was trying to choose a casket and write a eulogy for the man I had spent my life with, Mr. Henderson and the Hawkeye Workers Credit Union became a relentless, tormenting presence. They called every single day. I tried to be reasonable. I begged, I pleaded, I offered solutions. "Please," I said during one of our first conversations, "just tell me how to fix this. I can pay the $5 right now over the phone." Mr. Henderson sighed, a sound of pure administrative boredom. "Ma'am, the $5 is no longer the issue. The issue is that the loan agreement is with a deceased party." I then tried to get the loan moved into my name. I had a perfect credit score, and with David's life insurance, I could have paid off the entire car on the spot. "I would like to assume the loan, or even get a new one in my name," I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. "That's not possible," he said flatly. "You are not a member of the Hawkeye Workers Credit Union." So my next logical step was to try and become a member. "How do I join?" I asked, a glimmer of hope in my chest. "I'll fill out whatever paperwork you need." There was a short, almost smug laugh on the other end of the line. "Membership is restricted to current or former employees of the factory and their immediate family members who are signed on at the time of account creation. You never worked there, Mrs. Hayes. You are not eligible." It was like talking to a brick wall, a wall that called you every day to remind you how powerless you were. The final straw was when I asked about the down payment. We had put down thousands of dollars, a significant chunk of our savings. "If you are taking the car," I said, my voice trembling with a mixture of grief and fury, "then you must refund our down payment." Mr. Henderson's reply was swift and brutal. "The down payment is non-refundable as per the terms of the contract Mr. Hayes signed. We are not obligated to return it." They wanted the car, and they wanted to keep our money. They were leaving me, a brand new widow, with nothing. Not even the decency of a week of peace to bury my husband. The harassment was relentless. The phone calls were a daily torture. Mr. Henderson would threaten me with repossession agents and legal fees, his voice dripping with superiority. The beautiful red car in my driveway, the last great gift from my husband, started to feel like a curse. Every time I looked at it, I felt a fresh wave of anxiety and despair. It was a constant, gleaming reminder of the cruelty I was facing. The low point came the night before David's funeral. I was sitting in the living room, surrounded by photos of our life together, when the phone rang yet again. It was Henderson, his voice impatient. "Mrs. Hayes, I am calling to inform you that if the vehicle is not returned to our Cedar Falls branch by tomorrow morning, we will have no choice but to file for immediate repossession. A tow truck will be dispatched to your property." I just broke. I dropped the phone and sobbed, great, heaving gasps of air that hurt my chest. They were going to send a tow truck to my house on the day of my husband's funeral. It was more than I could bear. I felt so small, so utterly defeated. They were not just taking a car. They were taking a piece of David, erasing his last act of love for me. And in that moment, sitting alone in the dark, something inside me shifted. The deep, aching grief was still there, but a new feeling began to bubble up through it. A hot, sharp, and wonderfully clear anger. The gentle, quiet Carolyn Hayes who always followed the rules began to disappear. They wanted to make my life hard. Fine. I would show them what hard really was. The funeral passed in a blur of black clothes and hushed voices. The next morning, I woke up not with tears, but with a plan. It was a crazy, audacious plan, but it felt like the only sane thing to do. Mr. Henderson called right on schedule, around 10 in the morning. "Mrs. Hayes," he began, his voice laced with that familiar, smug tone, "have you made arrangements to return the vehicle?" A strange calm settled over me. "I'm working on it," I said, and for the first time, I hung up on him. I went to my computer and did some research. I found a large Ford dealership in Des Moines, a full 6-hour drive from Cedar Falls. I called them and spoke to a nice young salesman. I asked him if they had a cherry red sedan, a specific model with all the same features as mine. He checked his inventory and confirmed they had the exact car on their lot. I told him I would be there that afternoon. I packed a small overnight bag, grabbed my checkbook, and walked out to the driveway. I got into David's car, the credit union's car, and for the last time I ran my hand over the steering wheel. Then I put it in drive and left Cedar Falls behind. That 6-hour drive was transformative. With every mile that passed, the weight on my shoulders seemed to lighten. I was not running away, I was taking control. The fields of corn and soybeans blurred past my window as I drove west, a sense of purpose hardening inside me. I was no longer a victim. I was on a mission. I arrived at the Des Moines dealership late in the afternoon. I found the identical red car, and it was perfect. I bought it on the spot, writing a check for the full amount. There was no loan, no credit union, no Mr. Henderson. This car was mine and mine alone. Then came the most important part of the plan. I drove the original car, the one they wanted back so badly, to the most remote corner of the dealership's massive, sprawling public parking lot. I parked it between a rusty old pickup and a large delivery van. I got out, locked the doors, and took the keys in my hand. I walked over to a storm drain at the edge of the lot, held the keys over the metal grate for a second, and let them go. The faint clatter as they hit the bottom was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. I checked into a hotel, had a nice dinner, and for the first time in over a week, I slept through the night. The next day, I drove my new car, my own car, back to Cedar Falls. It sat in my driveway, indistinguishable from the one that had been there before. I waited. Sure enough, the following morning, my phone rang. It was Henderson. "Mrs. Hayes," he said, his voice sharp with impatience. "Our agent reported the vehicle is not on your property. Where is it?" I took a deep, satisfying breath. "Oh, that," I said, my voice dripping with false innocence. "You wanted it back, so I returned it. It's at the Ford dealership in Des Moines, the big one, right off the interstate." There was a long, stunned silence on the other end of the line. I could almost hear the gears grinding in his head. Finally, he sputtered, "What? You have to bring it back to the branch here, and we need the keys. You are contractually obligated to return the vehicle and the keys to us." That was my moment. The dam of my politeness broke, and a week of righteous fury came pouring out. "No," I said, my voice as hard as steel. "I don't. You wanted the car. It's in Des Moines. Go get it. You can send one of your precious agents on a nice little 6-hour road trip. As for the keys, I seem to have misplaced them. I think I might have dropped them somewhere in the parking lot. It's a very big lot. He can look for them while he's there." Henderson was speechless, making little sputtering noises. I cut him off. "You wanted to make my life difficult while I was trying to bury my husband. You harassed a grieving widow over $5, so you know what? I'm giving it right back to you. Go get your car." And with more satisfaction than I had ever felt in my entire life, I said, "Don't you ever call this number again." I hung up and immediately blocked his number. The silence that followed was glorious. There were no more calls, no more threats. A month later, a letter arrived. It was from the Hawkeye Workers Credit Union, but it wasn't from Henderson. It was from some low-level manager, and the letter was practically begging. They explained that the cost to transport the car from Des Moines, hire a locksmith to make a new key, and reprogram the car's computer was costing them thousands of dollars. They were pleading with me to please just tell them where the keys were. I read the letter twice, then I walked into my kitchen, tore it into tiny little pieces, and dropped it into the trash with a smile. I looked out the window at my beautiful, cherry-red car, my car, shining in the driveway. It was more than a car now. It was a monument to the moment I decided I was done being a victim. It was a trophy I had won all by myself.